And welcome back to the CODESHO podcast, everybody.
Hey, what's going on?
So today we've been following. It feels like every week there's like a new update on the whole Apple App Store fiasco, and those that have been following know that this week has been especially news breaking,
Yeah, that's what I said.
interesting.
Like, we live in interesting times.
Yeah. So okay. So there's two parts of this that I want to talk about. Epic. So they obviously decided that they wanted to add a new payment method to the Fortnite app, where instead of paying for V-Bucks or whatever with Apple's payment method, you could do it with like a credit card or debit card or whatever, and they offered their users a 20% discount if they did it that way, giving most of the savings to them, which I find kind of weird though that they did 20%, being that it's 30%. Because they net $1 more by doing that. So it's like, well, we're going to give you all this discount, but we're also going to profit off of it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, so
It's still cheaper to the consumer.
it is still cheaper to the consumer, sure.
Yeah.
So they're passing along a portion of the savings along to the user, but not 30% of it, which is interesting. But anyways, so they do that, and then, oh my God, Apple comes along and they pull them from the App Store, which, whether or not we agree with Apple, that was expected. It's odd to me that Epic was like, what? How could they do this?
They do that, yeah.
Yeah, obviously they did that. You've been obeying the rule for this whole time. It's not like just
They know what the rule was.
they knew what the rule was. Yeah, it's not like somebody was around some conference table like, "Oh my God, how did we not think of this?"
Yeah.
No, they've been thinking about. Every company's thought about this, including the ones we've worked for.
Yeah.
Everybody's considered the thought of putting their own payment method in there. They would love to, but we can't do it because you're going to get pulled from the App Store.
Yeah.
So they get yanked from the App Store, and they kind of, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I know there's a lot of people that support them, and I support the message, but they're kind of going about it the wrong way, in my opinion. They're kind of throwing a little bit of a hissy fit. Like, you knew this was going to happen. And for them, for Epic, this is, for both Epic and Apple, this is a huge loss. Like, this is a lot of money. They were the highest grossing game on the whole App Store. They made more than Candy Crush Saga, which was the second one. They made tons of money. I think they made something like $1 million a day or something like that on Fortnite. Crazy amount of money on the App Store alone. So this is a huge loss for them, and it seems like a really stupid move. Like, why would you do this? Like,
To stick it to them.
to stick it to Apple?
Yeah.
Okay, fair, because Apple's losing $300,000 a day.
Because they can afford. Like, that's the thing. Like,
But who does this hurt more? This hurts Epic way more than it hurts Apple. Apple's going to be like, okay, we lost $300,000 a day.
but yeah. So again, I always say this. I'm fence sitter or whatever. I can see it on both sides, and that's the thing is, because the thing is, who can stand up to them? That's the other thing is, maybe they don't care that it hurts them. It hurts their bottom line. They don't need that $1 million a day, which is a funny thing to say, right?
Who, Epic?
Epic.
Really?
I don't know,
That's a lot of money.
but they still
a third of $1 billion a year.
Yeah, I understand it's a lot of money. Obviously, nobody likes to do that, but like, our company can't do that right now. Any of the other companies we all might like to. It has to be people like the Basecamp guy or Epic or whoever, where like because who can stand up? Because if I start to make an app, I can't do it. I need to be on there. So maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they say, well, we're going to eat this loss, but we want, like, because you can't get stuff changed unless you do it.
Here's the thing. Here's why I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and trust me, I'm the first, even though I'm an Apple hardware fan, or not hardware, but an Apple device fanboy.
Yeah.
I love their devices. I'm not in love with the company. I'm really not.
Yeah.
But I do love what they make. They make some amazing products.
Yeah.
I happen to just like them more than the alternatives. I like Mac more than Windows. I like iPhone more than Android. I'm not an Apple lover, though. I feel like everybody groups people with iPhones into this like iPhone or Apple loving family.
Yeah.
No, I'm not in love with Apple. I will critique them just as much as anybody else will. But I'm kind of going to side with them on this one because mostly, I like the message that Fortnite's delivering. But here's the thing, and Tim Cook talked about this when he testified to Congress. Basically, they said, your 30%, Congress told Tim Cook this. They were like, your 30% is outrageous compared to the next highest payment processor. The next highest is like 3%. You guys are at 30%.
Oh, I can already see a flaw in that.
Well, you go ahead with your flaw.
Yeah. they're not a payment processor. They're a platform.
Exactly.
They built the platform. So that's why I said I'm on, like, I can easily see both sides. The fact is, I don't even like calling it a monopoly, because they built it. Hey, we came along, Apple, we built, there wasn't smartphones, or maybe a BlackBerry, I guess. But like they built this, they built the infrastructure, the App Store, they continue to build tools. And so and people are upset because, hey, you're charging me too much for this thing that I really want to do.
Well, let's be clear. They are a monopoly. Now, I know that for some reason carries a negative connotation, but it just objectively speaking, they are a monopoly. They dominate that industry. Now, Google's the next one. Actually, Google has more market share than Apple, so if anybody's a monopoly, it's probably Google. But they are monopolies. Like, nobody can compete with them. And there's countless cases. Here's to me what a monopoly means. Apple came out with the Screen Time app, right? Do you know what that is?
Like measures just measures your screen time. Something like that. Yeah.
So there's some child features of that where you're able to monitor your child's usage of their iPhone, right? And so there was a ton of apps on the App Store before Apple implemented that did the same thing. Well, lo and behold, Apple's going to come up with a million reasons why this wasn't why. But conveniently, those apps got removed from the App Store by Apple around the time that Screen Time came out. They're going to say it's for all these other reasons. Tim Cook tried to defend it by saying, like, well, they were collecting data on... He's going to play the whole, like, I don't know, like, not victim card, but like the like moral card, because he was like, well, they're monitoring child's activity, and that's creepy, and it's better if Apple does it. That's stupid. That doesn't make... So to me, that's a monopoly, because you can decide who does and does not succeed in a very large industry, $150 billion a year industry, and you guys can shut that down like that. Fortnite can generate $400 million a year in revenue, and you guys are the sole decider about whether or not that person can make that much money.
Yeah.
That's a monopoly. Not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I do understand. It's just it's difficult because when you built it, like they were the ones who built this thing, and it just so, like, the reason we suddenly consider it a monopoly is because everyone says, oh, well, you have to be on the App Store, which is true, but that's only because they built such a fantastic, for like lack of a better word,
with some amazing APIs.
Yeah. And so, like, hey, we spent a whole bunch of money building this thing, and you want to use it, and then you're upset that we want to get paid for you to use this thing.
Yeah, that's what Tim Cook said. I'm not a huge fan of Tim Cook, but I did agree with what he said. He was basically like, stop looking at the 30% as something that we use to just process payments. That's not what it is. And I don't even... The thing that I liked about his response was he also didn't approach it from like the perspective of, well, we give you this great platform. He actually wasn't egotistical about it like that at all. He basically just said, look, we give developers some incredible APIs. We have hundreds or thousands of them that are available to these guys when they build apps. If we didn't provide that, imagine what it would look like to build an app without UIKit or without Swift UI. You couldn't do it. I mean, you could, but you'd have to build an engine, which is something you're familiar with, but you'd have to do that.
You'd have to do all of that.
It would be crazy. It would be super, super hard.
Every iOS developer, I'm looking at you right now, you get the benefit of the fact that they switched over from OpenGL to Metal.
Yeah.
Like, because they built their own... Maybe that's a little bit like inaccurate, because I'm not sure what their core graphics was using before. But it had to talk with some... Like their core graphics library had to talk with the hardware at some point. And they wrote some... Like they wrote their own graphics API that talks with that. So, and
even outside of that, it's not just that. Tim Cook pointed out that not only did we create that for you guys, we also created the actual UIKit framework, which is what everybody used to build apps up until now, and still used wildly today. And on top of that, we built the language that's used today. We built you guys a programming language that most people really like. Most people really like Swift.
Everyone prefers Swift to...
I have a great job. I make a really good living. And that's all because of tools that were built for me to use. And I just tapped into those skills. So, like, Apple's done a really good thing. And again, people... So there's the guy, he's some executive at Epic. He was tweeting all about it. I was reading all through his Twitter. And he was saying the problem that I have with Apple's payment processing method is that it doesn't allow for competition because it's anti-competitive, which, by the way, whether or not people agree with it, anti-competitive business practices are illegal in this country. In the United States, you cannot be anti-competitive. You have to allow competition. Small example, but like Facebook's acquisition of Instagram, as it turned out, should not have been allowed because it's anti-competitive. You're being a monopoly. You're basically just saying like, well, we see you guys as a threat, so we're just going to buy you. You're not allowed to do that. Anyways, but I don't want to get into the whole legal part of it. But anyways, the guy at Epic, he was saying, I want people to be allowed to compete. But that's interesting because there is competition and it's Android. But what you're doing is he was comparing Apple's payment processing method to Stripe or Braintree or PayPal.
Yeah,
that's not what it is.
That's not correct.
It's way more. Yeah, that's like saying like, oh, we're gonna compare Toyota's Camry to I don't know some dirt bike or something. Like, it's not the same.
It's like, yeah.
That was even a terrible analogy.
That was, but
you get my
understand,
point.
Yeah, it is apples and oranges. It's apples and cows. It's just completely different.
A better example might be like, I don't know, like if you're gonna say like, well, this house costs $300,000, but this building is $10 million. Why aren't they charging the same as the house? Like that's anti-competitive. No, it's not. It's a very different thing. You're getting a very different product.
Yeah.
So the thing that I love so much about this Epic thing is that Epic goes and throws this big old fit about it, which again, I hate to like rag on them too much because I agree that 30%, even with all of the things, it does seem high. It does seem like it doesn't consider some of the anomalies of the App Store or whatever. I don't know how. Well, I was going to say I don't know how Apple could write exceptions for individual apps, but they do review every single app. So I don't want to chase down that rabbit hole. But the thing that was so funny about their fit was they like get all mad about it and they're like, God, Apple's anti-competitive and blah, 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 blah. And they release this whole slander video campaign against them. And then Google comes along and they're like, oh yeah, you can't do that here either.
Yeah.
And then like the whole house comes crashing down because you're like, your whole anger that was directed at Apple and for them being anti-competitive, Android's over here competing with Apple and they go, oh, you can't do that here either. We can't allow that.
Yeah.
The good thing Android does allow is the ability to have like or sideload different app stores. Like you can like there's like the Samsung App Store, the Amazon App Store, Epic has their own app store.
And you could just download. You could just like I could have a website filled with all of my different APK files and anybody can come to my website and download that. So it's not like it's even that difficult. It's just slightly more difficult than the Google Play Store, which offers ratings and whatever, like the review process, whatever level that they do. So you can sidestep all of that. You can still relatively easily get your Android app onto an Android phone without the Google Play Store.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that I like about Google's approach is that to me it does encourage competition in a way that Apple's doesn't because Apple strictly does not allow like third-party app stores. You cannot do that. You have to use the Apple App Store. And that's, to me, that's where Android did it right. They said, look, we've got the Google Play Store. This is a worldwide recognized and trusted app store. And if you want to be here, you can, but we've given you the tools to do all this stuff. So we want 30% of the whatever, but you don't have to do business here. If you want to go on another app store, you can, but your audience is much smaller because every Android phone comes with Google Play. We're giving you access to a vast market of people. And that seems fair. But again, I don't know if Apple owes any obligation, but okay, so here's the thing. I'll play devil's advocate with myself, and I want to see what you think about it. Is what Apple's doing anti-competitive? And if so, how do they solve this problem?
The problem, I don't know if this is the real issue, but this is certainly what Apple would say. The problem is if they, like, because one other piece that we're forgetting, and maybe this is where some of that 30% goes, is they do review every single app, and they want it to have some quality standards because they want the iPhone to be like elite or whatever, right? It's in a separate class. It's, I don't know about bags, but like I have like a Puma backpack. Some people carry around like their Louis Vuitton. Like,
Yeah.
and so if you have some higher quality, it's not exactly the perfect analogy, but if you're trying to make some like higher quality product, and then you say, okay, anybody can come here and use this, like use our platform, you can help build for us, but we want to make sure that it meets these standards. Is that like, does that become anti-competitive? I don't like what they do either, but maybe that's like, what's the right word? Because I keep saying elite, but I
Well, so here's the thing: legislating anti-competitive big business practices is, I don't know what the word is. Is it a strange way to deal with the problem? Because
yeah
I want to. My initial gut reaction to that is like I don't agree with legislating. Like if they've got the better product, they are going to get the better market share,
yeah
and people aren't forced to spend their money on Apple. Like you
exactly
can
yeah
spend
yeah
your
yeah
money on whatever you want. So part of me doesn't like that. But here's why they did it, and I don't know. I'm presenting what I've read and heard. I
mm-hmm.
don't have any evidence to say that this is true. But the government, when they put these anti-competitive legislation stuff in place, basically what they were saying is when somebody becomes a monopoly, it does not stimulate business growth the same way that competitive business practice does.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, although we can allow humans to do whatever they naturally would do, I mean, this is the basis of every government legislation. Basically, the government saying like, we know better than what you do, so we're going to put this in place to make sure that the economy stays stimulated
Mm-hmm.
because it's actually better in the end. Buying from one company is actually not good for the country the same way that businesses competing is.
Yeah.
Bringing new stuff. Because I guess the reason that it's better to have competitive business practices, and this does make sense to me, is like right now, let's say Apple's not releasing the new iPhone with the new ProMotion display or whatever, which is like the 120 hertz display. People have been wanting it on the Mac and the iPhone forever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's rumor that they're not going to do it in the new iPhone. Well, the reason that they're not going to do it in the new iPhone is because there's no competition. I mean, there's Android, but what's weird about Android and iOS is they don't really compete with each other too much. You either have an iPhone or Android. You're not like going between the two.
Yeah.
And so since they are such a monopoly, there's nothing like if they don't release the 120 hertz display, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. So there's
Yeah.
no if we had two companies like Apple, they're going to be pushing to have the best product always. But Apple's not always releasing the best product. What they're doing is they're holding back so they can make more money every year with like predetermined, guaranteed new products. Like basically Apple's planning. I mean, I'm sure the third iPhone from now is already in planning. They already know what it's going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year they're going to hold back a little bit. They could release the best product, but they don't want to do that because they want you to upgrade the next year.
Yeah, I see.
And so that's where monopolies hurt the economy because they're not stimulating product growth. They're not stimulating innovation because companies can just kind of do whatever they want. So that's where all this stuff comes into play. And I do agree with that part, but I don't know if legislation.
Yeah, I don't
the
know
right
if the
answer.
government getting involved, because the other thing is, don't buy it. That's the other thing. Is like you as a consumer don't need to buy an iPhone. You as a maybe you think that it hurts you. I didn't even know about the 120 hertz display. That might be a cool thing, but yeah, whatever. They have a business strategy for it, and I don't fault them for that. You're right. If there was a more direct competitor, then maybe that business strategy would be slightly different. But it's like, yeah, you don't have to buy. You don't have to buy it. I don't upgrade my phone hardly ever.
Well, and what I think people don't really realize, especially the younger generation, because here's one thing. You're obviously a little bit older than me, like over a decade older than me. So like when you hear IBM, I think that means something different to you than it does to me. I look at IBM as like, oh, Lenovo computer, like whatever. Like, but they were a giant at one point. And I think at the peak of their business, people were like, these people can't fail. Like these people are unstoppable. And then Microsoft comes along and just destroys them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's easy to get short-sighted and think, well, Apple just dominates their monopoly. Nobody can stop them. They're everything. But, dude, IBM fell. IBM fell hard.
I don't know if you are did you bring up IBM because of that video that Epic made?
No, that was why. Oh, because they were. No, that's actually a good point, though, because that was directed at them.
Yeah, so
Apple's video.
So
from 1984 or whatever.
Yeah, they made it in 1984, and they were they were making fun of the fact of like it's hard to explain. So like go and watch the Think Different campaign. I'm telling the audience right now, go watch the Think Different campaign. It's like brainwashed masses, forced. It's hard to explain. It's from the book 1984, but they were actually Apple was poking fun or like making fun of IBM.
Yeah.
IBM was the power that they were going to disrupt, and now Fortnite or Epic made an identical video with like Fortnite characters throwing.
Should we play it?
We can. Yeah.
Keep talking.
Oh yeah, but like so it's doing the exact same thing. Again, it was originally from a scene in the movie 1984, which is from the book 1984. Apple did it and they were talking about IBM. They were going to destroy the power, which obviously
They did.
They did, right? And so the whole thing is Fortnite is now doing it with Apple. And like the talking head is now Apple, which is just funny. So like I wasn't sure if that's also why you brought it up, but Apple was the big, or IBM was the big power that Apple was trying to destroy. They didn't like the direction that IBM was going, where everyone is forced to use a like humanless terminal. Like they didn't think that, like they wanted to give power to the people in a certain way. Like at least that's in the Steve Jobs documentary or the Steve Jobs book. That's what he talks about. That's what they were going with. They wanted to bring humanity to the computer, and they felt IBM was going the wrong direction.
And they won. So I guess
won, yeah.
that's my point is like I get how it can seem like companies like Amazon and Google and Apple, they're too big to fail. It does seem like that, but like history says differently. And like I know it's like in human nature to look at our circumstances right now and just be like,
this time it's different.
This time it's different, but it never is. It's never different. These guys can and will fail. Like if they push too hard, people are going to get fed up. I mean, it's like people are really pissed off about this whole Apple 30% thing and that there's no other option. People are mad about it. And so we can think that like, oh, maybe they're just whining about it and Apple's price is justified. But the fact that there's a conversation about it says differently. And both sides can fight. I mean, Apple could say like, okay, you guys want you want 30 or you don't want 30%. This is honestly what Apple should do. This is how they should stick it to them. Okay, we'll give you whatever payment part. You can handle your own thing. You're not allowed to use UIKit or Swift UI.
Yeah, just turn that off.
Turn that off, and you cannot use any of our APIs.
Can't use Xcode.
Can't use Xcode. Yeah, and then people will be like, okay, never mind. All right, we'll pay your 30%.
Because it's so it is like I said, I see it both ways. Because the fact is, those developers, I'm a developer, I make pretty good money. The people in Silicon Valley who work in Palo Alto, they make more money, I'm sure. Like they get stock options, all that or whatever. Those developers have to get paid, or else they're not going to be working on how do we make this language improvement? How do we do this? Make this. They don't do the compiler, I guess, but they do the IDE. How do we make this compiler?
They do. Apple does build compilers. They absolutely do. Tim Cook was talking about that when he was testifying to Congress. I didn't dive too much into what he meant by that, but he was saying that they absolutely do build compilers.
They use the Clang compiler. Am I wrong on that?
I don't know what he meant by that. There could be maybe he didn't mean Xcode specific. I don't know, but I mean I also wonder if they work with who. I don't know. We should actually look into that because he specific. I can even play the video. He specifically mentioned that. I mean, they did build Swift, so like they have to work with. You would think they work with somebody that works on.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
They have to have some involvement.
Yeah.
To think that Apple hasn't invested any resources in compilers seems silly.
Yeah. Maybe that. Yeah. I don't know who makes the Clang compiler. I thought it was just open source, but you're right. They must work,
or at least they contributed to it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll play this real quick.
Wait, can we watch? Can we watch the Apple one, the actual 1984 Apple one?
Oh
first?
yeah.
Because that's Apple 1984 commercial. Because I don't know if you ever watched this one. I watched it back when I was reading the.
Oh, this is the one I was looking for, anyways. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the Super Bowl one. Is this gonna be loud?
No. We'll see. Can you hear it?
I can't.
Oh man, hold on.
Okay, we'll get it. We'll get it working.
We'll get it. Output. Oh, there we go. That's the problem. And that should work.
Cool.
I love this commercial.
Yeah. It's just rows and rows of people just being brainwashed, basically. And
Man, just though, like, okay, I'm not saying that they're as bad as maybe IBM was. I'm not sure. I also didn't really live through that era. But uh, what I will say is it feels like they're getting a little bit like that.
people were talking about that with like iPhone when iPhone 4 was coming out. Like we talked about this last week. Because the App Store, the original App Store restrictions were even more strict. Like people were saying, like what, like you are being like IBM, you are being the man.
Dude, Android released a whole campaign about this. What was their little slogan? It was something like "We're together but different." I think is what their whole campaign was, and it was a direct campaign against Apple, basically saying that like Android users are together, whatever that means, which is
Yeah.
weird to me because I don't need to be in a community with fellow iPhone users or whatever. But anyways, the point was we're together, but we're all different, and we want to celebrate the difference of Android users. Like they don't have to
Yeah.
do the same thing.
Your icons don't have to be all squares with rounded corners.
Yeah, and I mean you can add whatever. What is the name of the thing that goes on top of Android? Like what is TouchWiz called? We talk about this in the podcast all the time, and I can never remember what that layer is called.
I just call it the theme. I think it's
There's a name for it though. Hold on, let's find out what the name is.
on my phone. I can download themes. I have an Android phone, and I think that's what they call it now.
It's an interface that there's a name for it. Oh my god, it's
This one just called it a touch user interface.
because you can look these things up. They're called something.
Yeah.
TouchWiz is user interface created by development feature and is advanced. Why does none of this have the name? If some
Launcher, that's what it is.
a launcher. That's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
what it's
right,
called.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, a launcher. Where did you see that?
It was down at the very bottom. Those links, TouchWiz Launcher.
TouchWiz launcher. That's exactly what it's called. A launcher. Anyways, but yeah, anybody can build a launcher, and you can completely retheme basically the entire phone.
Yeah.
And we also allow companies to come in and build those launchers for their, or you can build one yourself and install it on any phone.
Yeah.
So that was like the whole campaign is like, we're different here. Like we're not gonna make you do the same thing. And Apple's gotten a lot better, I think. But like in general, you jump on somebody else's iPhone and it's a very familiar place because it's
Yeah.
exactly like yours. There's not a whole lot different about it.
Yeah.
I love iOS 14 widgets though. I think that's going to help start moving in the direction of like you configure the pages of your phone however you want.
Yeah.
I love the app drawer. iOS 14 is going to be really awesome, man. I played around with the beta a little bit already and it's pretty legit. Anyways, let's play the Epic one real quick.
Oh, this one's side by side. Is that the one? Look at that.
Oh, it's funny because it is like timed like perfectly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they did that 100% on purpose.
There's no mistaking it for anything else.
And it's obviously Apple now. Can we turn that down a little bit? I think the words were different too. I think because it was mentioned profits and stuff like that. It's defied App Store monopoly. In retaliation, Apple is blocking Fortnite from 1 billion devices. Join the fight to stop. Oh, join the fight to stop 2020 from becoming 1984. They are being harsh. Free Fortnite. Hashtag free Fortnite.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. Apple Fortnite is a PC game. They're very fortunate that that game is able to run on a really powerful device like an iPhone that Apple built. So there's that. So Apple built this great phone that is capable of running your game, which is really impressive, by the way. Yeah. And basically without them, you'd be limited to the PC, but with just a little bit of developer resources. I don't want to understate how much work it took, but it probably wasn't that bad to port it over to, because they built it in Unity, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or Unreal, sorry. They built it in Unreal. Yeah. So they probably just ported it over to iPhone with not too much dev work. Probably took a little bit to reconfigure it for iPhone, but whatever. So they move it over, and boom, you guys can make $1 million more a day.
Yeah.
Apple wants a cut of that. I mean, I'm sorry, but like that was a... What if there was no iPhone? You wouldn't be making any money at all. I just don't know why you'd blow this. Like, you guys were making $1 million a day. Why would you blow that? Just leave it. Leave it alone. This is free money as far as you're concerned. Like, just put it up there.
Yeah.
And now you're missing out on all of that. And like it's more. Here's the other thing. I never even thought about this. They probably make up at least that 30% that Apple's taking in brand recognition alone from being on the App Store. One more thing. Dude, I just realized this. Think about this. I would love to know their numbers. I don't know. I don't think we'd be able to get them, but they have these numbers. The App Store consistently had Fortnite on the featured page.
Oh, yeah. Do you think that was worth 30%? Yeah.
Absolutely. That real estate is invaluable. So Apple's probably paying you 30% back in that alone. They're like, hey, you guys can get whatever traffic you want. We're going to give you at least 30% more traffic by consistently putting you on the featured page.
Yeah.
Dude, that pays for it right there. Like, why would you blow this? That's something that Tim Cook didn't even mention, and I never even thought about that until now. But, Apple's giving you real estate for free.
Yeah.
Doesn't cost you anything to be on the featured page.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
God, it just seems like a stupid decision, and poor iOS devs at Epic, like out of a job now. I was laughing because I was telling somebody last night. I was like, the developer that pushed the deploy button, he was probably like, "Are you guys sure you want to do this?" Like.
Yeah.
I mean, if they told us to do that at work right now, I'd be like, you guys sure? Because we're probably going to get banned.
Yeah. Do you think, what was I going to say? Do you think they have just a dedicated iOS dev? Because like if it was built in Unreal, I don't know if this is true. I mean, like obviously somebody knows how to deploy it to the App Store. But if it was built in Unreal, like that does like the configuration. I don't even know if that would take much extra like specific dev work. Probably not like iPhone dev work.
Well, I guess the way that I look at it is like when I say iOS dev, I guess I don't necessarily mean like Swift programmer. It's just just the guy that works on the iPhone app. But there definitely would be, because like the user interface is completely different, like the the UI, I mean, and there's controls that are completely different from PC. I mean, on PC you're going to use like this versus on the phone you're going to.
Yeah. I just don't know enough about.
Different.
I understand. I just don't know if there's going to be like they could have still built it in Unity, but that's fair.
No, I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, but so obviously somebody worked on the specific mobile version.
Yeah,
and like
it's not a 1-to-1 clone.
Yeah.
And I mean it can play with. I mean, there's probably different networking if you're on mobile than if you're on PC or whatever. So yeah, I'm sure that they've got if not one guy, a team of like mobile developers that focuses on that experience.
That's a good point.
And the in-app purchasing is completely different. Obviously it's completely different. So I'm sure they have some people that work on that. I would just love to talk to them and just say like, just that one thing I just mentioned. Apple probably brought you at least 30% more revenue just by nature of being on the platform. That 70% was already free. Like as far as I know, I mean, I don't know how they do their accounting, but like that was probably just 70% more money. Like
the problem is,
or not 70% more money, but whatever it was.
The problem is they're not a payment processor. You can't categorize them like that. I think that's the big problem. Maybe you still think 30% is too much and they disagree with you. They say 30%. But okay, that's okay. You can argue about that. I can see it from both sides, but let's not categorize them as a payment processor.
Yeah,
If you're doing that, you're being dishonest.
Yes.
That's I would definitely say that.
Yeah. One more thing that I'm thinking about now too. We could go on and on all day. This isn't even the topic of this episode, but one other thing that I want to mention is there's statistics. I would like to. Well, I can find them later. But there's statistics that say that Apple Pay and in-app purchase, they need to come up with a better name for it. There should be a name for that because it's not Apple Pay. Apple Pay is for
it's different. Yeah.
credit cards, whatever. But anyways, Apple Pay and the in-app purchase thing, there's statistics that show that people are far more likely to convert and buy your product by using those payment methods because they're so easy. You just buy, Face ID, transaction complete.
Yeah.
Versus on Fortnite's regular app, you have to go grab your credit card and put in the information.
I hate that. I didn't do it with Fortnite, but I hate that. And I have stopped making purchases on a website on my phone because I had to.
Yeah, thinking about pulling out your card and typing it in, or
it's all the way over there,
or it's upstairs or whatever. Yeah. So I mean, that alone, I don't know how much more that converts, but if it converts at 50% more, which doesn't sound that unreasonable, or even 15%, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Though these factors come into play, and it's just I feel like whatever people made this decision at Fortnite, this was so short-sighted. I very much believe that the more we talk about it, actually, I've actually not been in favor up until this episode very much about the 30%. I've always thought, even though I recognize that it's more than a payment processor, it's steep. It's a lot of money. And I used to kind of think maybe it's too much. 20%, I don't think people would complain as much because you still get 4/5. You get 80% of your money. 30% is just steep. But the more I'm thinking about it, you can really profit pretty heavily from using their stuff.
Our company has.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, it was relatively easy. Obviously, our company does.
The company we work for.
Yeah.
Not CODESHO.
Not CODESHO, not yet. Yeah. The company that we both work for, they obviously, there's a whole lot of money on their back end for doing marketing and stuff like that we're not responsible for. But they hired you, one iOS dev. Of course, there was some back end work that some of it needed to be done anyway for the website. And then 6 months or a year later, they're making, the company itself is making a great amount of profit, even though we do have to pay the 30% to Apple and Google as well. We do the same thing. So it's they hired these two devs, and it's just now the money's flowing in.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just want to point out that they only charge this for digital products. So these are products that have no overhead. The V-Bucks that Fortnite was selling don't cost them anything. Mm-hmm. That's just free. You just give it to them.
Yeah. So if you're Amazon and Audible is a perfect example where they charged for the credits because that doesn't cost anything, and it doesn't cost anything. I guess there must be some royalties on an audio book. I guess that is slightly different than. I don't know how they do it.
I mean, even if the royalties are paid, there's going to be costs to doing business.
Yeah, that's true.
Fortnite selling V-Bucks, they have to pay designers to come up with content to buy with the V-Bucks. But I guess I just mean once Fortnite makes this new axe or whatever, or this new skin for the character.
Once they make it once, they can sell it a
unlimited
billion times.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No overhead.
And that's different than an actual book, an actual physical book where that has to be reprinted.
Paper and
and actually shipped as well.
Yeah. One more thing. What was I going to say? There was another point that I wanted to make about.
In general, you were just saying, up until now, you thought it was steep, but now I think you're starting to see.
Yeah, that maybe it's not too bad. Yeah, I don't know. It does just seem like the value proposition from Apple is very high. Mm-hmm. I think. Oh, I know the point I was going to make. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Apple. One thing that they don't do enough for developers, and this might help. Because here's the thing. the person that ends up eating the cost of the 30% is not the consumer, it's the developer.
Yeah.
Whereas like, and I know that might sound silly, but there's actual examples of this. Like there are certain companies that if you use a credit card, they'll charge you 3% more. This is definitely true when you buy gasoline. They're gonna, if you use a
Oh
credit
yeah.
card, they charge you more. So the person that pays that is the consumer, and the consumer is paying 3% for the convenience of being able to use a card.
Yeah.
In general, I think consumers don't have a huge problem with that. They'd rather do that than carry cash or whatever.
Mm.
Um, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't like how Apple goes about charging the 30% because if the consumer had to pay it, they wouldn't. And this
Yeah,
would have
yeah.
been gone a long time ago.
Was that the Epic? I think I read that on one of the Epic guys' tweets. Somebody was talking about that, and they used that exact thing.
He wanted the consumer to pay it?
Or if it was an upcharge, like if it was an upcharge like broken down, hey, here's the price. Here's the price that we Epic are charging for this. Here's the 30% from Apple. If it was broken out directly like that, then and the consumer had to see it,
Right.
then they might be more upset.
Yeah, it's invisible to the consumer. The consumer's just like, "Oh, I'm paying $10." But like if you sell it for $10 anyways, then if they were to sell it to the consumer and it said $9.99, and then when they start to check out it says, "Oh, it's $12.99 because you got to pay Apple 30%," that would never fly.
Yeah.
Consumers wouldn't do that. They would get furious. And there's way more of those people than developers, so they've got a bigger dog in the fight, I guess. But
Yeah.
of course Apple's not going to do that, and they were really smart to put that off on the developer.
Well, yeah, because like if I go to make an app and I am charging, like I would normally charge $10 for this thing, and then I charge 12 to make up for that 30%, then people, or like 13 or whatever, people are gonna get upset at me still.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna, hey, how come it's this price on the website and this price over here?
Yeah, I'm mad that I just paid $13 on the app and then I found out it's $10 there. And the bad part about it is that Apple will not let you say that there's a 30% charge in the app.
Yeah.
Like you're not allowed to put like, "Oh, we charge a little bit more. You can go buy it on the website instead." You can't do that.
Yeah.
They won't allow you at all to say that you have anything other than the app that you can buy this thing on or whatever. So, back to the original point, what I think Apple's done a pretty poor job of is when they have to defend themselves, they always say like, "Oh, well, we give you Xcode, we give you Swift, we give you all this stuff." But I think that what they should do, and this might help alleviate a lot of this stuff, is if they just had a page in App Store Connect or something, and they were just like, "Look, we see that you're setting up products for the first time. We want you to know that we charge 30%. Here's why. We're not a payment processor."
Yeah.
And like Apple doesn't really do stuff like this because they don't want to have to prove themselves to anybody. That's one thing I don't like about Apple is they tend to err on the side of arrogance instead of like I don't know, whatever the word is, not compassion, but I don't know, just helping people understand. Because if they would put that and they would say, "We charge 30%, but we want it to be clear. We're not charging you 30% because that's the cost to process the transaction. We're charging you 30% because it costs us a lot of money to develop Xcode. And in general, if we didn't charge the 30%, Xcode doesn't like directly make us any money. Like we have to pay for those resources."
Yeah.
And Apple makes a lot of money. Like I said, there's like the App Store, the revenue generated by the App Store is something like 150 or 160 billion dollars a year. So Apple's making, what would that be, like 45 or so billion of that? And they need money to invest in developers to create these tools that you use. And it would, I mean, I get that like Apple needs apps. They need third-party developers for the platform, but like everybody wants to be neutral on the cost of doing business, and so like they're gonna want to make that money back. They want, and plus, here's the other thing: if Apple's not making that 30%, they do actually have less money and less resources. And we're recording again. Say something.
Check.
Okay, I think we're back in.
Cool. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Are we? Yep, we're good over there. That happened the other episode. Anyways, I think it's also worth mentioning that Apple has hands down the best developer conference of any tech company, WWDC. And yes, you do have to pay a lot of money to go. I get that. But they do say that like WWDC is usually a net loss or at best a net break even for Apple. Because they're taking all of their developers off. Like pretty much all of their engineering team stops for a week.
Oh, yeah,
and they come to this thing. And it allows them to do stuff like that as well. So the money's, I know it's like it sucks to say like you got to fork over your money so this company can grow themselves, but especially if you're a developer, you have a great career because
But
of
but yeah, and it's also like as a again, it's worth it to the company that we work for. It's worth it for that 30%. They don't like it. Our bosses don't like it, but it is worth it because it boosts our like that brand, their brand, but I say our brand as well because I like the company. It boosts that brand to say, look, we have this on the website, and we have like you can do this thing on any platform.
I mean, there's something to be said about having an application that is cross-platform that works on
Exactly,
everything.
exactly.
That boosts your brand's validity, your
Yeah.
brand's
So
awareness.
we don't know these numbers, but we might actually be making money. We as the company we work for, we might be making up that 30% in people who are buying it because they see that we have apps.
We absolutely are, and I can actually prove that because I don't know, I don't actually know the exact numbers, and I'm not going to report, but I can give a ballpark. Apple tells us where our traffic is coming from, and I would say over half of our traffic comes from the fact that Apple's advertising us in the top whatever. We're definitely in the top 200, but oftentimes we're even in the top 50. Sometimes we're even in the top 25 apps in our domain, and that alone generates us a ton of organic traffic.
Oh yeah.
And it makes up over half of the downloads that
Yeah.
we get. Half. So that alone is boosting our revenue by, if it was 50%, which it's more, that is generating us 100% more revenue.
We should actually. I would be curious to bring this up with the bosses because it's really easy to sideload uh, Google apps, right? So we should throw it out to the bosses, like say, hey, what if we just get off of Google Play?
I don't think.
Yeah, that's my point though. Is I don't think anybody
Oh
would
yeah,
actually.
they would never want to do
Yeah,
it.
because so like we wouldn't have to worry about the ratings, but that means nobody could find. People would have to find us through the website, and they could easily. It's because I worked at another company that wasn't allowed on the Google Play Store, so easily it really is just like a one-click button. It pops up and it allows you to download, and we would have to.
I see what you mean. Like
Yeah.
as a case study, it would be
Yeah.
kind of funny to see what the boss, how they would respond to that. They'd be like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because if you say, hey, dude, go download the VShred app. If you're on an Android phone, you're going to Google Play.
That's where
And if it's not there, you're probably just going to be defeated and be like, okay, never mind.
Mhm.
I mean, our downloads would plummet. Plus, it's a trusted place.
That's exactly right.
The downloading from a website is not trusted.
Well, that's why they have like that's the other thing in all of this. You mentioned it right at the beginning. Google does it too. Google also charges 30%.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is trusted. The in-app purchase flow is exactly as you expect. You see like on iOS or Android, when you click that button, you see that familiar Google or iOS pop-up that lists your price, that lists the tax or whatever. It's the same every time. That's why they even for like Apple Pay or Google Pay, they have a specific button that they want you to display.
Mhm.
They want you to display it like, hey, pay with Google, pay with Apple. And that way it's a trusted button. And you
Yep.
can pay the other way with PayPal or whatever. But they want it listed there with it. They want it the same size or bigger.
Yeah.
And so like because it is more trusted. PayPal should be good too, but
There's a huge market for those trusted platforms. PayPal's a great example. PayPal took the internet by storm because if I purchase anything on the internet, if PayPal is available, I use it.
yeah, me too.
I trust it. It's easy. It's
easy.
convenient.
Yeah.
I don't have to go find my wallet, and it probably like we were talking about a minute ago. It's probably more likely to make me convert because I don't got to get my credit card out and then think about my decision.
Yeah.
I just kind of password done. It's like super easy. So
You're already signed up on that through that processor.
I just think what we're realizing is that it's just very much worth it. They do. Apple's got to make money from their developer program somehow. It's unreasonable to expect them not to.
Yeah.
But again, the problem is, it's like you said, it's kind of disingenuous to say that Apple's 30% is to process the payment. That's so much more than that.
It's so much. That's the fact. The fact is, it's so much more than that.
I almost wonder if one of them, Apple or Google, if they did reduce their percentage, like to compete with the other one, if in turn, people would push more traffic to that platform because they know they can make more money, and in turn, that could actually grow that one.
Well, so that's where like the collusion comes in. When I was in Korea, uh, there was this special type of bar. Originally there was only one. They have these like vinyl bags that could stand up, but it was like cocktail in a bag. That was like the fun. That was like the fun thing. So it was like these vinyl bags they could zip. You'd put your straw in, and they would make a cocktail in them. And they when actually there was two before when I got there, and then eventually a third one opened up, and they were always $5, like the equivalent of $5 in America. And actually, I dated a girl who owned one of those places, and she said when she first opened up, they came over to her place, like the other two, and said, "Hey, like we all want to make a profit here, so like let's try to keep it around $5."
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so maybe that's what Google and Apple is doing, saying, "Hey, like we do need this to keep these tools going. Let's not try to outbid." Because that's the thing is like if one person goes to 29, then the next one goes to 28%, and then
Well, this is why they put these anti-competitive laws in place, is because that's exactly what they're trying to avoid, is that collusion, that monopoly. They want it ultimately is better for everybody if there's more competition in every marketplace. But I mean, yeah, we could chase that rabbit all day long. I mean, there's just so many examples of this, and I'm not sure how you deal with it, because it's easy to say like, well, Apple should allow for more competition, but like,
okay,
you have to have some deep pockets
go
to
build
do
it. That's fine. Go build it.
Yeah.
Google did.
Well, so how do we get around that problem though? Because it's
Microsoft tried. That's the thing is like it's not like there are companies that could do it. Like you're right. You do have to have deep pockets. It's hard to
Amazon
outdo
probably could.
Amazon could, Sony or whoever, like some Japanese company. Obviously, China was trying to with Huawei, but not everybody trusts them.
Yeah.
Reasonably so. So like yeah, other companies could do it. It would be hard for me and you to like small time trying to be business owners to say, hey, I'm going to go and compete with Apple on phones. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that you can't do something else.
Yeah. I don't know. The more we talk about it too, it's like if you were going to have somebody in the position that Apple's in, again, I'm not like a huge Apple company fanboy, but they're a pretty good company, all things considered. I like that Tim Cook said that they're not just trying to dominate market share, because they're not. In pretty much every category they compete in, they are not the majority. Google beats them in a lot. In computers, they're definitely not the majority. Windows destroys them. They just said, we're just trying to make the best product. And they do. They make really good products, hands down. Like them or not, they make really good products. And in general, I think that they are a pretty reputable, trustable company for the most part. I trust them more than Google, I'll tell you that, like for sure.
Yeah.
Google's a data company.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is they ultimately they are trying to get you to buy their product. They are a company, and that's the difference is you are buying their product. So when they say they're focused on privacy, I believe them. They might be using that data for their own internal whatevers, but like they want because like selling your data isn't their like their revenue.
Yeah.
Their revenue is you buying their product. So they want, of course, they want to come out with new features and come out with them slower, like you were saying. So like maybe they could add 10 features to this new iPhone, but instead they're only going to add 5 because those other 5 could be the next version.
Yeah, and Apple's putting in a lot of things and features in place that actually disrupt the whole data market, and I think that's proof in and of itself. Like you could think well, maybe you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and blah blah blah. Okay, maybe, but like Apple in iOS 14 is allowing you to turn off your advertising identifier, which is a huge deal. We talked about that. I forgot to send you that article, but like that is a blatant fact. Like that's reality. They're turning that off, and that's probably the single most abused or used tool to track people, and they're just going to allow you to turn it off.
Yeah,
that's the proof is in the pudding right there.
Lose money. Until they figure out a way around it or what, like an alternative.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that goes. It is going to really disrupt things, but like Apple's giving. I mean, that's the cool thing is like Apple's giving their consumers a really amazing thing. As a consumer, that's a decision that you want. I mean, it's a decision you want to make. Like,
here's my so here's my question. The interesting thing is they both Apple and Google take that 30%. But you as a developer, which platform do you prefer working on? iOS or Android?
oh, iOS.
Yeah, me too. Like 100%. And the thing is, like, and because I think the tools are better. I do think that, right? And the thing is, it's not even Google. Google didn't make Kotlin. Like the IntelliJ made Kotlin, and Google eventually adopted it. A bunch of their libraries aren't like now they're kind of making them first-party libraries, but a lot of them start out as third-party libraries that they adopt, and maybe like open source, but like they end up adopting them. What else? IntelliJ, like a bunch of the features of their IDE come from IntelliJ, and they make money from selling that IDE. They're a separate company. They're not Google. They make money from selling that IDE. WebStorm is that as well. Like when I use IntelliJ, I use the Community Edition, but people sell like the Pro. Like they sell like the Pro. Now I don't know if Google is putting any additional money into Android Studio to make it better, but like obviously there is an Android SDK in there.
Yeah, I wonder why it's free for Android Studio. Google must be like subsidizing that cost with IntelliJ somehow.
Well, no, you can buy you can use IntelliJ for free as well. Like they have a Community Edition.
Some of them I thought you can't. Oh, just as an all-purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like for
Java.
the specific ones, usually they charge like PHP.
Because WebStorm, the PHP one, they charge for.
Is that because IntelliJ by itself is free and open source, right? Is it open source?
I don't know if that's true.
Either way, it's free.
It's free, yeah.
But you can throw a skin on top of it and sell that.
Yeah, I guess so.
I wonder if IntelliJ takes a cut of those proceeds.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, like they the problem is I don't know the features cuz I've only used the free versions. Visual Studio used to be the exact same way. They had for a while they had like a nerfed Visual Studio that we got for school. It was like just student edition. Now they also have Visual Studio Community Edition. This isn't VS Code. I'm talking about actual Visual Studio.
Yeah.
But then the professional edition has like extra tools. The problem is I've never used those as professionals. I don't know the difference between or PHP Storm. I was calling it WebStorm. It's like the same suite of stuff. PHP Storm and Android Studio. I don't know what is actually different. Whenever I see people use PHP Storm, it looks the same, but there could be some underlying tools that I just don't know about.
Oh, there for sure is.
Yeah, I believe it.
Like they're like the XDebug stuff and
that's just built in
stuff like
but like
And I'm sure, like, if you use just regular vanilla IntelliJ, will it give you without? You probably need some plugins, right, to get like the autocomplete features of like for PHP or whatever. I think that's the thing is like
IntelliJ. It's different. I think that I could be wrong on this. IntelliJ alone is only for like Java Kotlin projects.
So then that's what you get from PHP Storm.
Yeah.
Is like all that
the ability to do
autocomplete, IntelliSense, whatever. You get all that stuff. It's pretty good. Yeah, but like you said, like Xcode, I'm not going to sit here and say Xcode's a better tool than Android Studio. They both very much have their flaws, but there's no denying that Xcode is built for making iOS projects.
That's the other thing, right? Like IntelliJ builds these IDEs, and they can use this similar like set of code, like for all of these different languages, and like one of those languages is like the dominant. It's a dominant backend. WebStorm is like for front-end websites, so everyone is using this stuff, and so like they have extra revenue, like a little bit of revenue everywhere. Xcode is one product.
Yeah, IntelliJ absolutely dominates the all-purpose IDE market.
Well, they make one for iOS too.
Yeah, they do. It just doesn't work with storyboards.
Yeah, they make one for C++ as well. I've never used it, but I should try it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You know what you're getting. It works really well. I mean, Android Studio is fantastic for making Android projects. There's no doubt about it. There's no.
It was better than Eclipse. I used to do it in
Oh yeah,
Eclipse.
it's
It was
better than
horrible.
Eclipse. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and I mean, I think it's even good for like app code is good too for iOS. If you like IntelliJ,
Hmm.
then if you like that platform, build iOS apps with it. You still have to use the interface builder part of Xcode, but in general, it's great.
Mm.
But again, Xcode is built for that. You can do everything in there. They have some fantastic profiling tools. They have some fantastic debugging tools. So does Android Studio, but I'd argue they might even be better on Xcode. And you could deploy straight from Xcode,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah.
stuff. It's a really fantastic program.
Interface builder. It has problems, but it is also it is a like the way that it integrates so well with the code. Android, again, you can argue which method is better because not everybody likes storyboards. Because you talk about this as well. Not everybody knows how to use storyboards. I do like the fact that in Android you can just jump into the XML.
Yeah.
I wish that on iOS you could jump into the XML, but then also use storyboards when it was convenient.
Yeah.
Because
You can edit the XML. The problem is that, and they could have done a better job at this maybe, the XML is just too complicated.
yeah,
It would
because
be too hard to follow.
because on Android Studio they do have a design like a design equivalent. I never use it. I never touch it. I think it's just way better. I mean, like I'll do like the split view where you can look at your XML and then see what's showing up on screen. But they have like, I don't know if you ever clicked that other tab where you can actually like set your constraints.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
I never use that.
Yeah.
It's just way easier for me to use the XML version.
Yeah.
And that's partly because the other one just isn't as good. It's not as good as the storyboard, like the auto layout stuff.
The reason that I think that it's too hard to do it in Xcode, or in like storyboard files or zip files is that, like I said, it's too complicated because um, you like segues and constraints and everything. They are their own objects. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you were a whiz, you could maybe do it, but like the problem is that it would be way too easy to corrupt the file. Like
Yeah, yeah.
way too
Well,
easy.
it's also I'm not sure what's going to happen with Swift UI, but it is also interesting if you want to load up a new page on your app, like load up a new screen. iOS and Android do it right now the exact opposite ways. On Android, you say load up this class. I have this class called Splash Activity. Load that. And then within that, like the on create, you say, oh yeah, this class is going to use this XML layout file.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas on iOS, you say, okay, open up, like load up this storyboard, and then give me the, I don't know I don't know what they call it. Give me the view controller with this identifier.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like,
Yeah, initializing the class by itself is pointless. Doesn't really work.
yeah. And so again, I'm not saying which one is better or worse, but it is interesting that they do it the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, in general, I do, like you said, I like building on Xcode more. They have a whole team that works on Xcode. They listen to what people are saying.
Mm.
It's fantastic. It's a great tool. Android Studio is too, and
It's good, yeah.
obviously they use the resources, but
But still, overall, I like the iOS. I like deving on iOS more than I like deving on Android. I feel like I'm fighting with.
well, and I think there's two reasons for that. It's mainly because on iOS, every aspect of the development process was built by Apple, including the language that you're using.
Yeah.
So top to bottom, you're using tools that were built for this.
Yeah.
And with Android, it's kind of the opposite. None of it was built by them. And the other problem is that we talk about this a lot, like the backwards compatibility of
gonna
the
bring that up.
platform is
Yeah, yeah.
just super painful.
Yeah. And because that's the thing is like it's not just the fact that you have backwards compatibility, which can be painful. It's that Apple is willing to make those breaking changes. Hey, we think this is better, so we're gonna like this might break. Like your app will still run if you have an app in the App Store. That'll still run. If you want to do a new release, you might have to change stuff about your code. Okay, we don't
Yeah.
use this thing anymore, or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's also just confusing because they've got like the compatibility elements, but they've also got the non-compat, and like it's not really clear what to use out of the box. Like with
Yeah.
iOS, it's like, here's a view controller.
Here's the view controller.
There's
Yeah.
no other.
Yep.
There's no mistaking this for anything else.
Yep.
This is what this does.
Yeah. And I think that is maybe that makes it way harder if you were going to jump into Android first, because yeah, you have like
I learned Android first, and it was brutal.
yeah, you have all those compatibility elements now with Android X, which is just like a new set of libraries. That's why I was telling you, like, I just use like the compat on everything. They have a text view. I just use.
But that's confusing, because it's weird that, like, if you jump in, no, you don't want to just use a text view. You don't want to create a text view element. You want to create a app compat text view, and it's just confusing. Like, the whole platform is built on that backwards compatibility. And what's weird is they used to not be like this. Like, when Fragments came out, it was a breaking thing. It was like, this is not compatible before Honeycomb or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was a good move. And Fragments are great, an integral part of building Android apps, and really useful.
Yeah.
And they just said, we're not really going to support this in the past, because this is I just wish that they would start to do that again. Like, they should reimagine the whole platform. And if they did, hey, it sucks. You got to learn these new tools and everything. But, like, fundamentally, this is a more stable, better performing platform.
Yeah.
The outcome of your development is more, not predictable, but like consistent or whatever. Like,
yeah, even at it is can be confusing. Even at the last year's Android Dev Summit, somebody had asked the question. Now they answered it pretty quickly, but somebody had asked the question. It's still not up for debate, but it's confusing. Is it better to have to just use activities, or is it better to have one activity and a ton of fragments? And then they said a ton of fragments.
Yeah.
That's the preferred one. But the problem is, that's not the out of the box, here's the thing that you should definitely be doing. And they have, I just realized this recently, is they have like a nav controller that maybe it came out, it might have come out like even last year or the year before. I don't know when it came out, but I happened to open up a brand new project, and I noticed there were some files that I'd never seen. And so those files didn't exist when I started creating the app that we're currently working on. Those files didn't exist. So I guess it was within 2 years that they provide this kind of nav framework for fragments.
Yeah.
But again, like, that's confusing. Like, okay, I can pick up on that. That's no problem. But, like, you know, somebody's going to be looking, okay, how do I do this thing on Android? And then they're going to go look up tutorials or whatever, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, well, what's this new stuff?
I find that that's a problem too on Android. Is like, everybody does things so different that finding the right answer for your problem is just so hard. It's pretty painful.
I think that they're trying to go with, like, okay, here's our preferred architecture now. Like, they came out with a couple of different architecture components. That was a couple of years ago. And I think that's what they're saying, is like, no, like they're trying to, without forcing a framework on you, they're trying to, like, say, here's our preferred implementation.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really complain too much though about the difficulty of these things. Android's tough, but I hate that it's hard to learn, but, like, it's also a very valuable skill because it's hard.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the harder the skill, the more it pays.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, it's fine. Like, I for sure, I know this is true because I've tried to hire people before, worked for companies that have tried to hire people. Finding a really talented, competent iOS developer, iOS developers get paid pretty well, sure, but it's also not crazy hard to find a good one because, I think it's not too hard to learn. Like, it's definitely easier to me than Android to learn. But on the other hand, finding a good, competent Android senior developer is really hard, and they're willing to pay a lot of money. Like, the company we work for was really excited to get you because it's really hard. Like, the last company I worked for, I think I mentioned this maybe in a previous episode, but they were willing to pay this 19-year-old kid, like, all of these moving expenses and fly him from Florida to Vegas to work here. Because he was the only decent developer we could find. And he spoke good English and whatever. I mean, because sometimes that's a problem. But in general, it's just, people just, I guess, don't get excited about Android development the same way that, maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to say that. I don't know if that's
Some
true.
people do. Your buddy, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Hopefully we can get him on the podcast soon.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be cool.
I think we're gonna have him 2 weeks from now.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's unfair. People do get excited about it. I just think that like iOS development is more profitable for one. I think that's like fair to say, objectively speaking. Like they say that they make more money, people get more excited. People, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Like I guess it's people just get more into iOS development. It seems like because I guess the development experience for the most part people think is better. I don't know what the reason for it is. I don't know why there's not more talented Android developers, but I am saying that is true. It's for sure true that finding a good Android developer is harder than finding a good iOS developer. They both make good money, but like if you're a really good Android developer, you could probably demand a pretty decent amount of money.
Maybe I should ask for a raise.
There you go. It's true though. Like if you're a company, the company we before got really lucky to get you because we got you pretty early in the discovery process. But we've had several iOS developers that we just had to had to move through a few of them because it's just I don't know. In general, finding really good developers hard. But we already went through 2 iOS developers, and like I said, I think it's easier to find good iOS developers than Android developers. But our company got really lucky to get you, so they didn't really have to endure the painful. Trying to find a good one, and it's nice that we work well together. That's also a problem sometimes.
I think that's a problem. I mean, that's maybe a whole nother topic.
We hardly butt heads at all, though, which is really good. I mean, we'll disagree sometimes on certain things, but in general, we're both pretty laid. You're more laid back than me, but like we just work well together. Sometimes you could find a really good guy, but if you and another guy just butt heads, then that can be a problem.
This is soft skills, and I don't think I'm an expert at this. It just so happens that I was like reading how to win friends and influence people when I was like 10 or 11 or something like that. Maybe not that. Maybe
it's my favorite, one of my favorites.
That's a good book. But compare that with actually I was talking with my brother, who he used to do. He worked in cars. He doesn't do programming. He worked in cars, like mechanic, and he says like. He didn't get along with his coworkers because, like, he tried to keep his workspace clean, and like when you're working on cars, like you're covered with grease and oil and stuff like that. And he just said they wouldn't keep it clean, so he would get on their case, and everyone thought he was a jerk. And I was like, well, maybe, like I understand you want to keep it clean, but also, like maybe be a little bit more relaxed about that. There's a balance, right?
For sure, like. One of the best soft skills, especially in programming, is agreeableness.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard. That can be super, super hard at times. But like you in programming, I think you kind of got to trust but verify. Mm-hmm. Like whenever you have some new person that you're working with, give them every ounce of respect. I mean, I get that people have to earn stuff, and some people might not agree with that. But like Jocko kind of says this, like. If this guy has an idea and that's not how you would have done it, just let them do it. And if they fail, they failed.
Well, he even lays it out. He says, like, because when he comes in, he's a leader. It's like, if I would do it this way and somebody wants to do it this way and it's like 10% different, it's not going to make a big difference. Oh yeah, I'll let them do it. What if it's like 80% different? I'll still let them do it. That's fine. Like 70%, okay, maybe now I'll give them some suggestions and like see where they're going, right? But like I might still. This is Jocko talking. He's like, I might still just let them do it. If it looks like they're going to succeed and it's just a different way, but it's not like detrimental, then let them do it.
Yeah.
When it starts getting like 50 or 40 or just doesn't look like it's going to succeed, then that's when like, he'll throw some stuff out. And that's the thing is, he says like, if I'm so good, if I know this so well, then and this person has this idea that I see that it's going to fail, it should be pretty easy to like without like being mean to somebody to be like, oh, well, like, did you consider this? Like, it should be pretty easy for them to also hopefully spot that's going to fail.
Yeah, yeah.
If the way they're doing it isn't detrimental, isn't going to make something fail. Oh, let's try that. Cause then I might learn it. I've told that story before, but I used to say that with my students. Do it this way. You do it the way that you're comfortable with it. If you find that it works, then come back and tell me.
Yeah.
Now I've learned.
Yeah. We were talking about this a little bit before the podcast. It's really important to see what people would do if given the opportunity to do whatever they wanted to do. How would you solve this problem?
Hmm.
And if you never let somebody do that and you just micromanage them the whole time, you'll never know what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty egotistical to not think that maybe this person knows something that you don't know. We all
Yeah.
have very different experiences. Let this person, especially in the beginning, do what they would do and get a really good understanding. Actually, we had a guy, I hate to pick on him, but we had a guy, and in the beginning of him working with us, he had a task to do a decent sized feature,
Mm.
and I let him basically just go after it, man. Do whatever you got to do, because if I have to come back and do this later because it was terrible, fine. Like, I would have had to do it anyways before
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
hired, so that's fine. But let's just see what happens. And if I would have just hovered over him that whole time, I might not have ever seen what his architecture would look like if he was given the opportunity by himself.
Mm.
And it was good, because in the end, we saw that he definitely wasn't a good fit. He ended up kind of biting off more than he could chew, and ended up just with poor architected whatever. And so it's good. It's like, okay, this is clear. You're
Mm.
not the right fit for this. That sucks, but I'd rather not drag you along and have some painful relationship.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
better to kind of cut this off at the beginning. And sometimes that's the most like ethical thing you can do. Like, I think sometimes people hate firing people or whatever, but it's actually good to go ahead and sever that relationship. If this isn't going to work, don't drag people along. Don't make it painful. Also, if you're going to micromanage somebody, both of you are going to be unhappy. Like, he or she's
Yeah.
going to be unhappy that you're just hovering over them all the time, and they're
Without,
not.
yeah, without, like, give people rope, like,
Yeah.
or like whatever, like, yeah, like, you don't have to micromanage at the beginning. Like, I'm trying to think. Jocko has tons of examples of stuff like this, but yeah.
Well, he says, like, people are humans. Like, people are whatever. Like, they've all got their own quirks. They've all got their own skills. Is something else we were talking about before. Is like, um, you're not unlocking. You're paying this person a decent amount of money, whatever it is. Even if it's only it's $40,000 a year that's costing your business. And here, we want to plug that in real quick.
Yeah, let me get that.
Um,
You keep talking.
But I mean, yeah, you're paying this person $40,000 or $100,000, $140,000 a year or whatever. And if you tell this person exactly what to do, you're not tapping into their full potential. Like, this person's got skills probably that you don't know about, things that they're passionate about, things that they would do if you didn't tell them what to do. And you'll never know what those are if you don't just let them do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What did Steve? Or I don't know. We've also said that this quote a whole bunch of times. Like, Steve Jobs said, "I'm not hiring." I'm gonna screw it up. Like, I'm not hiring smart people and to tell them what to do. I'm hiring smart people so they can tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's true.
For you, for example, if when you were hired, if I or anybody else would have not let you architect the project the way that you did, we might not have seen that, like, this guy's got a really good brain for this. He's got and by the way, it's a very stable Android project, probably one of the more stable ones I've ever seen. Android tends to be problematic anyway, so it's very stable, and that was all because it was like, hey, dude, go get wild.
Yeah.
And that also solidified very early in your time here that, like, oh, this guy's the right guy for the job.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
guy definitely knows what he's doing. And micromanaging you or any developer, just, it doesn't do that. And I just can't, like, this was the same thing for me at this company. Was like, I got hired for a different position, and I made it clear pretty early on that, oh, you guys want an app. That's actually what I'm really passionate about. I'm arguably better at that anyways, and I'll be way happier here if we do that.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, sick. Yeah, get after
Go
it.
do that. Yeah.
Because we can, if we just found some guy that's really, really good at this, if they were right, then, like, that's going to pay off big time, and we can replace that old position.
Yeah, exactly.
With somebody that is passionate about it. You're not even passionate about it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Fine,
Yeah.
we'll find somebody that is.
Yeah, yeah. I do feel pretty lucky. I feel lucky that I was free to do the architecture that I wanted to do. I had a whole bunch of fun with it. There's some things we're gonna tweak. Like, architecture is one of those things that we should always be trying to fix and improve and stuff like that. And so that's fine. I was also lucky that the team let me just use Kotlin. And, like, because we had talked with our direct boss, and I think you were even in there. I don't know if it was in the interview or at what point, but we were just saying, like, I think I just asked, can I use Kotlin? It's like, have you ever done anything with it before? I think I had written one small personal project in it or something, and I was like, no, but it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard, and that was the better move. And I think it was better for my career. I think it was better for I think it's a better language. So I think overall it's better for the company. Java has too many null pointer exceptions because people aren't, because everything can be null. That's just one problem, and people don't necessarily check everything.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, your job satisfaction is
way better.
better
it's way
because
higher.
you got to build what you wanted to build,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
also the language is better to write.
It is. It's just, of course, it's more fun.
Yeah. This kind of actually segues a little bit into what we were supposed to be talking about in this episode anyway, so we won't dwell on it too much, but I did want to cover it because just a little backstory. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I mean, it's fine. I don't know how long we've been going for.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We're about an hour and 23 minutes. Well, how about this?
Because we can get the other guy. We can get Patrick, because he said he thinks he can do it next week, and we can talk about that
Okay.
topic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's very
We just
agile
wanted,
of us.
just as a little sneak peek into
Okay.
what we're going to be talking about, because this is something that's been kind of weighing on me a little bit. I am in a lot of like subreddit groups that talk about programming and stuff like that, and excuse me, one thing that I see a lot that really bothers me, not anything wrong with the person posting it, but just that this is a topic of conversation, is people often talk about like directly or indirectly about like imposter syndrome and like what that feels like to be a programmer, that you feel like you're like faking it to make it, and you're not as capable, and you're not as capable as you're putting yourself off to be, or you bite off more than you can chew at a job, and people are going to think you're a fraud and blah 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 blah. And just in general, I hate seeing that, because in one way or another, like everybody kind of feels that way. Like everybody's always going to feel like they could be way better than they are. And honestly, if you do feel that way, you're a pro. Keep going, because like I'm sure, I guarantee you that every humble and really
That's what I was gonna say.
every humble and really high performing athlete or anything like that, they're all going to wish that they were better than they were.
Yeah.
Guaranteed that. Go ahead.
Well, this is just related to, I think, our second episode, the ego versus confidence thing. You do have to have some confidence. That imposter syndrome can be a good thing, because you recognize that, at the very least, you recognize that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Like you're not there yet. You want to be here. Like you want to be there, like up at the top, but you're not there yet. And so that's not a bad thing.
And you absolutely do not want to be the guy that thinks you know everything.
Yeah.
You do not want to be them. People will hate working with you, and you're wrong.
And you're wrong. Yeah.
That's it. Objectively speaking, you are wrong. You do not know everything, and you won't, and that's okay. Like every job you work on, everything that you do, it's going to be different every time. I've never met somebody that didn't use Stack Overflow or something. Like, get out of here, man.
That's part of the work.
Yeah.
To me, like you're going to be Googling stuff. It's almost like there is like joke memes in the programming world. Like,
yeah,
you're going to be Googling stuff. You're going to be looking up stuff on Stack Overflow.
Yep. It's actually funny. I was talking to Amaya about this the other day, my wife, and lately I've been doing a little bit more work on Android, and that has resulted in quite a bit more Stack Overflowing than I'm used to doing on iOS. I just don't spend as much time anymore on Android. And last time I worked on Android full time, it was before constraint layouts and all sorts of stuff. So I'm having to like refamiliarize myself a little bit. It's a little bit like riding a bike, but you gotta do a little bit of research here and there. Anyways, she came over to my computer and I had like a million tabs open, and she was like, "What in the world do you need all this for?" And I was like, I just had to look up a few things, like trying to get this stuff done. And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, like I don't know how to do everything, so I'm like trying to figure it out." And she was like, "In general, like I'm a pretty confident iOS developer." So she's like, "This doesn't really sound like you." And and she like thought that like, she's like, "Are you sure you should be doing this? Like if you don't know, like if you don't know what you're doing, why are you looking all this stuff up?" And I'm like, "Well,
that's the job.
I know what I'm doing because I'm looking stuff up.
Yeah.
I want to know the right way to do this. I want to make sure that I'm doing it the right way." But that's just how it is. Like, if you know when you should be looking something up and you know when you don't know, you're a pro.
Yeah.
Like, bottom line, I'm not trying to call myself a pro, but I'm not going to write code that if you can recognize that you're not quite there, and you can recognize that you're not elite at this and you don't know, like, that's exactly the attitude that you need to have.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, because like when you write an app, whatever, when you write the first screen of your app, you don't know about MVVM or whatever, MVC, and you're writing it, hopefully you are also thinking, is there a better way? Is
Okay.
there a better way? And that was one of the things I did at my when I was working at that school. They had a little game engine, and I knew that it was bad, but I didn't know how it could be better. And so every semester I would just rewrite it and say, okay, actually we don't need. Why do we have these extra methods here? We don't need that.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing this thing, but the student can go around it. Like we have this piece that we're like, this is the suggested way, but the students can go around it. And so I just iterated.
Yeah. Well, here's like one thing that I could recommend. Again, we don't want to go all day about this because we want to do it on another episode. But what I find to be true is it's better ultimately to be honest with yourself and be honest with other people about what you know. That might be a little bit different when it comes to employers. I can get like wanting to oversell yourself a little bit to get the job, and in general, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not being an outright liar. You can definitely sell yourself. That's fine. But when you get into the job, don't try to convince other developers that you know more than you do, because you can be a fraud.
The code doesn't lie. We had that up on our board at work. That's
Yes.
exactly what I meant when I said that. Like, I think we even said, don't tell us you're a good programmer. Show us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've never once, I have very much admitted to developers before, like, I don't know anything about this topic. Like, not lately, but since I got really good at this, since I became like what I would consider like a lead or senior iOS developer or whatever, like my confidence is now fine. I don't question myself as much. I mean, I do question myself, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I'm much more likely now to admit what I don't know, because at this point, it's like if I don't know something, it's probably not unreasonable that I don't know it. Like, I think I know everything that I would need to know to do this. So I guess my point is like, I've never told some other developer on maybe some cross-platform thing, or like maybe they work on back end and I'm not a back end dev or whatever. If I'm talking to them about something, I'll be like, oh, I've actually like never heard of that.
Yeah. I've never
And tell me more. Like, I want to know more. I've never had somebody be like, look at this clown. He doesn't know this. Like, developers don't act like that. And if they do, screw them. Like,
I don't want to work with
you
them.
don't want to be around that person.
Yeah.
You want people that want to help others. Like, no developer, honestly. I think that's the thing, is people are intimidated by people that know more than them. That's kind of like the modern day muscle guy or whatever, is like, knowledge is so powerful these days. Like, maybe people are intimidated by developers that know more, that they think that, I guess here's my point. You'd rather be the guy that doesn't know this topic than be a fraud. So do not sit there and act like you know something that you don't. Just be humble.
I think that imposter syndrome is like Facebook.
Yeah.
Stay with me here. Because when I lived over, so what I mean is, you feel like you aren't as good, and you feel like you can't compete with all these other people because you think that they're so much better. But maybe so many people are just putting up like the front, just faking it, and like, you know, they might actually be really good. And so again, like, there's like, by having that imposter syndrome feeling, it's not a bad thing. Recognize that, okay, there's still stuff on my journey to learn, but maybe everybody is going through that fake feeling. And that's all I meant by it. Like, 'cause like in Facebook, like when I lived over in Korea and Singapore, everyone said, "Oh, you just lead like the coolest life." And I said, "I do. I'm happy with what I'm doing." But you don't see all of the studying I'm doing. You don't see like me working like teaching 13 hours a day or whatever. Like, you see the highlights when I go on a vacation or whatever. And so that's the thing, is like, people will judge you on Facebook by the highlights.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And like, I think that like people are judging themselves more critically, saying like, well, I'm not that good. Okay, that's fair. Maybe you're not, and so you can still keep going, and we can all always keep learning. But also maybe recognize that there's a lot of other people who are maybe more boastful, or trying to like fake it until they make it.
Yeah.
And I think the more refreshing thing is when people can be honest.
Yeah.
Like, that's maybe even the more rare situation.
Absolutely.
And I think it makes a better team. I think that our team is pretty good, because for the most part, I mean, certainly nobody has big ego at work.
Yeah.
Everyone's competent, and everyone's willing to help others, and like everyone recognizes and says, okay, yeah, you, Cole, are like a good iOS developer. So we're going to believe you when you say this thing. And nobody's just saying like, oh, I could learn iOS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no like, it's a good work environment.
Yeah. I think the more sensitive side of me says this. If you're feeling that imposter syndrome, it's because of one of two things. Either you're advertising more than you have, and then you have imposter syndrome because you're maybe being an imposter. So don't be an imposter. But I don't think that's what's happening most of the time. I think what's happening most of the time is this right here. You feel like an imposter because it's in the name. It's like syndrome. Either you're an imposter or you have imposter syndrome. And I think the syndrome comes from this. You have an idea in your head about what it means to be a programmer. And what that looks like to you is what you idolize, which is the people that are working in senior jobs, leads of projects, people that own companies that built whatever.
Yeah.
That's what you have in your mind as a programmer, not recognizing that the place that you're at right now is a part of being a programmer.
Yeah.
Nobody ever got to expert level by just existing. Like, you have to learn that.
Yeah.
And so you are a programmer. And I think that's the problem is, like, people don't want to go out and say, like, I'm a programmer because they're like, oh, I'm just not as good as I should be. And, like, what it means to be a programmer is I can create these types of applications. And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's not what it means. What it means is to be a learning hungry monster that just wants to keep getting better at what you're doing.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And you have to start somewhere. Like, if you're at one point, Usain Bolt probably was not a super fast runner, but like he was always a runner. Like, you were gonna be an Olympian one day, but like, you know what I'm talking about? He's like the fast. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah. So like, before he was setting all these records, he was still a runner. It didn't make him any less of a runner.
Yeah, and still just trying to get better. Yeah.
Trying to get better. If you don't try to get better, then you're not. Nobody's gonna idolize you anyways. Like,
in that book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. I bring this up all the time, but in that book, like, because one of the things they're doing is like he looks through some research and he the author finds people who really love what they do, who have like really great careers, like Ira Glass and stuff like that. He's like on NPR, and so it was actually Ira Glass who had this quote, who says, like, when you're getting started, like, he says, the problem is there's a disconnect between your skills and your taste, and like that's a good thing. It's like when you get started, you're creating this thing and it's not that good, and you know it's not that good because you want it to be up at this higher level. And so, but it's that process. So you have to just, okay, buckle down, and like he kind of says, like, suck it up, suck it up, and like put in the hours. But yeah, it's like you have to buckle down. You want to be a programmer, you want to be that good senior programmer or whatever. It's just gonna take some time.
yeah.
You know,
And recognize that everybody starts somewhere. Like, you're going to look back, like, every senior developer or really great developer, they had a journey, and guaranteed they're pretty proud of that journey. I'm pretty proud of where I'm at now. Like, I worked really, really hard, and that was part of the journey. I had to go through all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, don't feel like an imposter because you're doing what everybody else did when you're doing that.
Everybody else, you're doing what everybody else did and is doing. Because that's the other thing when it comes to like senior devs or principal architects or whatever. Principal architect doesn't know everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're solving new problems and we're coming up with new, like, I'm not we, like we as programmers. But yeah, like, they're also Googling stuff.
Yeah, and the cliche is, and it's true, you see the guy on top of Everest, but you didn't see the climb. So it's easy to look at all these other programmers and see them in their current state, and that's where you want to be. But like, they did not get there overnight.
Yeah.
Rest assured, they wouldn't. This job would not pay as good as it does when you get really good at it if there was no climb.
Yeah.
There's a climb, and everybody's got to go through it. And I just wouldn't feel like an imposter. And you're not going to feel like an imposter if you're advertising yourself as exactly what you are. You are a programmer, but you're either a junior or whatever, and you're learning. And never be afraid to admit what you don't know. Because what I found is 9 times out of 10, if I tell somebody I don't know something, they're usually really excited to tell me about it. Even sometimes if I know what somebody's talking about, I might even be like, oh, I'm curious. Like, what are your thoughts? I'm not just going to sit here and be like, oh, I know all about that. Let's stop talking because no, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear what you have to say. And that's better. People are going to like you more as a person. We talk about those soft skills. That's super, super important. You're never going to be successful without that. What was the, there was a guy on Josh Fluke's channel. He was Josh Fluke, no S, right? Josh Fluke. Anyways,
I don't know.
he was reading some Stack Exchange post on one of those things, and this guy's whole thing was, he said, I've been at this company for 2 months. I don't care to make friends, but it's clear to me that people don't like me, and I don't really care about that, basically, was what he was saying. Like, I don't care if people like me or not. Upper management likes me because I deliver what I say I'm going to do, and I stay for an extra 4 hours every day, and I'm getting stuff done, and I just don't care if people like me or not. I want the credit for what I do, and blah, 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 blah. And everybody just tore him apart because it's like, you are arrogant. You are trying to work without a team. You don't want to make people like you. Like, this job, you will fail. Upper management might like you in the beginning, but you will come out as an arrogant
unless you
jerk.
are so good.
And even then, I still think you could be an expert. Imagine like
I wouldn't want to. I mean, so what I mean by so good would be you're so good that you can go and start your own company. Like that level good.
And even then, people won't want to work for you. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't want to either. What that sounds like is in tribal leadership. We read that book, Tribal Leadership. It sounds like level 3.
Yeah.
I'm great.
Yeah.
But like in order to move forward, level 4 is we're great.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, you can't do everything, and that's that transition from level 3 to level 4 in that book is you have to have that realization that you can't do everything all by yourself.
I just wonder why that's so hard for certain people to understand, because we're a little bit off topic, but I don't know why it's hard for people to understand, because it's like, look at history. Nothing great was ever built without a team, ever.
Yeah.
Nobody single-handedly built anything except, I don't know, maybe some paintings or something. But like in general, like works of crazy engineering were never done without teams. They didn't build the Hoover Dam with one guy. They didn't build a rocket ship with one guy.
Facebook wasn't built by one guy.
Facebook wasn't built by one guy.
It may have started out as one guy. I still think Mark Zuckerberg had a team. It was for like a project.
Yeah.
But it was like a small team. Let's say a team of 3 people. I don't even know if that's true. Maybe it was just him. But it couldn't have kept growing. It wouldn't have been as big as this entity if
one person can have an idea, but like Facebook was never impressive before it had a ton of people working on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's just my little piece of advice is like, it's gonna be really good for you if people like you, and people are gonna like you if you're honest and genuine.
Yeah.
And I just think that means telling, and again, like by the time you've got the job, I think developers are the least of your worries about like whether or not you're gonna succeed. I guess what I mean by that is like, you don't have to prove anything to them. They're gonna help you. I've never asked I think I've worked with one guy that I really didn't like. Other than that, if I ask anybody for help, people are like, "Oh yeah, man, let me come over." Like, people get excited about that. You're gonna make their day. Like, I don't know if you feel this way, but like, if you ever come ask me a question on iOS, like, it makes me feel great to be able to answer that question, and you got the answer to your question.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever worked with anybody who, I've heard stories about it. I've never worked with anybody directly who I felt like I wouldn't want to ask them questions. But I know that there are people who, and the problem is sometimes they get promoted to like the middle manager level, and maybe they have the imposter syndrome, and that's why I feel like it usually is people higher up who try to throw that, like, it seems like they don't have the confidence, and so like they throw it around that, like, and I'm talking about developers, that like, I'm so smart and no, we have to do it my way.
Yeah.
And that's poor leadership.
Yeah.
More
yeah.
than
Yeah, those people have a lot more to worry about than you do if you're
Yeah.
a just junior developer trying to make your way in the world. So, anyways, but yeah, I think that's a little bit more than a sneak peek. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about there. There's no reason to feel that way. I like the people that respond on these Reddit posts because they just say like, "Dude, I've been doing this for 40 years and I still don't know what I'm doing." Like, I mean, or not that they don't know what they're doing, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm still figuring things out. Like, every day you're going to learn something
every day.
new.
Well,
so.
that's yeah.
And if you're not, you should.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing. I was gonna just real quick. We never end quite well, but when you're saying like your wife was looking at you with all those tabs open, and you said, "Well, I'm trying to figure it out," and she was kind of like, "Well, are you the right person to be doing this then?" And I think that's the interesting thing about being a programmer is, I think, as we've said this before, you have to learn how to learn. You have to learn to be uncomfortable with not knowing stuff, but. So I think as a programmer, as you develop, you just get that, like, you realize that is just part of the job, and I just don't think that exists in other Like, I don't know what it'd be like to fix a car, and I don't even know all the parts of a car. Oh, you got to rebuild this carburetor. Well, I've never done that before.
You know
That
what?
kind of thing.
Actually, though, to some extent, a lot of jobs may be more like this than you think. Like,
Could be.
I think that, like, well, with like a car, I know this for sure. When it comes to like body work and stuff, those, or actually not even just body work, with anything, these guys, like, whenever you take your car in, if you need to replace, I don't know, some part, I don't know, like you need to replace a fuel pump or something, like these guys are gonna go get the schematics or whatever for the car.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there's gonna be like some documentation on how to replace this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Nobody knows how to replace that fuel pump on
Every single car.
every single car because even Kia Soul probably has different specs or like relatively different specs like, what are they? Every couple of years they come out with like a slightly new style. So it's like some of that might be
Yeah.
different even year to year. So
The only thing that this might be scary on is if you tell your doctor, like, "Oh, I've got these symptoms." He's like, "I'll be right back." Like goes and Googles it.
well,
Like,
the thing is, doctors do that.
to
actually.
some extent, I bet they do.
Yeah. And I mentioned this before. Teachers do that too. I had to teach a class on animation, and I didn't know how to do animation. And it's like, well, you got to go and learn. And I said, oh, that's funny.
Actually, a lot of times that I've been asked questions by junior developers, I'll sit there at their computer, and it's kind of a learning
yeah.
experience, but I'll get on their computer and be like, "This is what I don't know the answer to this either, but I could solve this problem. I'm confident I could solve
Yeah.
this problem, but like, I'm just going to do some research. So let me show you what I would do to solve this problem." Because going back to your computer and Googling it and coming back with them and just copy and pasting some code, here you go, drop this in there. That's not really helpful to anybody.
Yeah.
But like, if you can show them this is the process that I would have taken.
So yeah, this is why I think I was at least a helpful teacher, because I would do that sometimes. There's a lot of times actually when students would ask me questions that I just wouldn't know the answer to. Oh, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And sometimes I could work it out. And so like I remember one time that somebody was asking me a C++ question, and I was like, I don't know, but let's do that experiment right here. How would we figure it out? So it wasn't even something we needed to like quote unquote research. I was like, okay, well, we can just write some code and do a test and figure out what the behavior would be.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we did it right there.
Yeah.
So it's like we all learned something.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that about doctors too, because it actually got me thinking. There's a clinic called the Mayo Clinic, and that's like their whole thing is that they treat uncommon conditions that people don't know what it is, and the whole idea is that you're kind of, in a way, you're kind of an experiment, but like you go in there, and then they've got like councils or whatever of doctors, and they all get together and they're like, okay, so we're going to take these, we're going to look into this, go read this paper, research this thing, and they're just trying to figure out like what it is. And honestly, that's probably better than some guy telling you, oh, you have X condition.
Yeah,
It's better if you go do the research.
Yeah.
I mean, these days, like, the world is getting more and more like, it's like knowledge is kind of who said that? No, somebody said like knowledge is currency. But I mean, it's kind of like that. Like I don't really care how quickly somebody gets back to me. I don't just want some guy telling me, "Oh, I know this." Like, right? Like, just go do some research. Like, get a more thorough answer.
Yeah.
So, anyways, in closing, there's a funny quote where they say like, "So if programmers just copy and paste code, why do they get paid so much?" You want to pay some guy a lot of money because you need him to know which code to copy and paste.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bottom line, I mean, you're always going to write code. Most of the time, you're going to write code that's been done before. So you just got to go find the right code and drop it in.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's it. Episode 12.
This is 12. Yeah.
Yep. We're just going to keep going. And hopefully next week we will have Patrick on, hopefully.
Yeah.
And the following week we will have Sean. And I think we're going to try to just do more of that. Like, you and I we'll never stop talking. But it's good to have real developers that offer different perspectives. Mm-hmm. It's pretty clear what our thoughts are on a lot of things at this point. So having people that have differing opinions or different backgrounds or whatever is going to be super helpful. So
absolutely, yeah.
Pretty excited to bring them on. All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching, and we will see y'all next week. Deuces.
Is that what we're doing? I was going to say, okay, peace.